Welcome to Sales Tax and More, your go-to resource for all things state tax related. Now here's your host, Michael Fleming.
Hello, everyone. Mike Fleming here, founder of Sales Tax and More, and today's co-host of the Sales Tax and More podcast, where we talk about everybody's favorite topic, which is, of course, sales tax. And today we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to interview the head of our sales efforts. It's Brenda Curry. Her actual title is Vice President of Client Acquisition and Retention. And she and our team are out on the front lines. So definitely wanted to get a different perspective on this. But before we get started, let me introduce you to my co-host, Ellie Moffat.
Hey everyone, great to be here. I'm really excited to have Brenda on today's podcast. And I'm going to do a quick introduction for our company, Sales Tax and More. Sales Tax and More is a full service consulting and solutions firm. We have a really great team here of experienced tax professionals who are very dedicated to fulfilling any of your state tax or related needs. So we do a lot of sales tax returns, sales tax registrations, consultations, research, and like our name states, more. So if you like this podcast, if you'd like to reach out to us, please subscribe and like, and you can find our contact information in the show notes or at the end of this episode. And Mike, why don't you jump right in here?
Okay, so as we said, Brenda, you and your team are out there on the front lines. So is there something that you're seeing that people need to be aware of? Is there one thing that keeps coming up over and over more than any other issues out there right now?
Yeah, so thank you. First, thank you for having me today. I'm excited to dive into some of these critical issues that have been popping up. Mike, currently what we're seeing, a lot of companies, particularly those relying on software for their filings, running into very, very costly errors. So not only missing returns, but worse, we're seeing tax collected that isn't being remitted. So recently we've encountered issues with local tax filings in Colorado. So many software companies are collecting at the state and local level, but they're only remitting the taxes on the state return. So the misconception is that the software provider is quote unquote handling the returns, and come to find out, once we start onboarding, we've discovered that all of the taxes collected in the local jurisdictions have not been remitted. And for some companies coming in, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so it's important that you either have someone staying on top of this, or that you have a provider who is offering real support to catch these discrepancies before they become issues. At the end of the day, software is a fantastic tool. You know, Mike says it's a necessary evil, but we have to remember that it does hinge on how well it's being managed and it's being monitored. Sales tax compliance relies heavily on human oversight. It's not on autopilot, like they say. And it's a problem that's flying under the radar for years, and organizations aren't catching it for several years, meaning they run into hundreds of thousands of dollars in unreported tax revenue. Serious issue with potentially massive financial repercussions. That's what we're seeing lately.
All right. So yeah, we've talked about this before, but how do people respond? Why do you think this is happening? How is this impacting them? What are they saying the software companies are saying?
So honestly, the reaction I've seen is pretty consistent. First, there's shock and disbelief, and then frustration and anger. And I think once they realize that there's no support from the software provider, they then shift their focus into how we're going to fix the situation. And unfortunately, they end up shouldering most of the cleanup and all penalty and interest. So that's kind of when they come to us, and we will then triage, what we call triage. We coined the term triage their account and see what's going on and help them to come up with a plan to get it handled.
All right. So you specifically mentioned Colorado, but it's not just Colorado. It's all of the home rule states, and even other states. I mean, I saw a big issue the other day in Virginia, and the software company got this company registered, and they were collecting the tax, but when the person signed themselves or configured the software, they put in the wrong type of software. So they put in consumers use tax rather than out-of-state use tax. And the software company was filing all sorts of $0 use tax returns, which they didn't need to be. And this went on for years. I think there was 2 or 3 years of tax collected, not remitted. And this was in the state of Virginia. It's not just the states that you're talking about. Now, you mentioned that I call the software companies necessary evils, and I hate defending these companies sometimes, but there is a part that our clients or future clients or prospective clients play. In the fine print out there, it tells you these things. And, why is someone not realizing that, hey, we got a bunch of tax money here that we think should be going to the states, and it's building up and building up? So the clients do have a part to play, but I think that it's because of the marketing that these software companies use, that, hey, just sign up with us and you don't ever have to worry about anything ever again. I think that is lulling people into a false sense of security. Ellie, you're our marketing expert here. What do you think of the marketing departments of these software companies or salespeople telling people, hey, just sign up with us and don't forget everything? Do you think that's an effective marketing message?
Well, I think really what I see within our own company and how this marketing message really affects people, it really gives me a little bit more of a clear picture than just if I was looking purely from a marketing background. I think it is really dangerous to lead people down a path that's not necessarily true. I think with all marketing things out there, especially today, you really need to understand a product and understand what they are selling you and how it's going to make your life better, and the pitfalls of that as well. And it just so happens in the sales tax world with these software companies, they're saying, relax, take it easy, we've got this, sit back. And it's just not the case. And it has really huge consequences for people, unfortunately. And that's what Brenda is on the front line seeing. That's what we're talking about in meetings all the time. And I do think it's important, with any marketing out there, that you really understand what you're looking at. And especially when it comes to something like sales tax, it's going to affect your whole business. It's going to affect your team members. It's going to have just such a large impact in so many ways. So I don't know if that was clear or not, but that's kind of where I'm sitting.
Yeah, unfortunately, I got it. I'm a big believer in under promise and over deliver. Brenda, it sounds like from some of our offline conversations that some of these, former software customers are thinking the other way around. They were overpromised and underdelivered. Would you agree with that statement? And you want to expand on it?
Yeah, absolutely. Just about every single person or company that I talk to believes that it's being handled. In other words, they don't have anyone overseeing it. They have this false idea that these returns are just handling themselves, someone's keeping an eye on them, and that it's, again, I hate to constantly use this word, but I hear it over and over, autopilot. And there's just no such thing.
Yeah, so I guess the moral of the story here is if you are doing business with the software companies, just make sure you're engaged. Make sure that you're double checking, because if a problem does pop up, you're on top of it, and instead of it lasting for 2, 3, 4 years, you're catching it in its infancy. And problems are a lot easier to correct, a lot less costly when you're catching something at the beginning rather than 2 or 3 years later. So I know that we say that these software companies are necessary evils. A lot of companies are still doing business with the software company who created their problem, because they still need them for the calculation. They still need them for the software piece. but they're moving their services away. However, you were telling me about this one company that is so upset, they're not even keeping them for the software piece anymore. They're looking for a new software provider or creating their own in-house. Can you tell us a little bit more about that company?
Yeah, absolutely. There's more than one company. Some of the larger companies are trying to find ways around even utilizing the software and wanting to create their own tax engine within their own ERP system. So we are seeing that as well.
Yeah, I guess that's exasperated if you end up paying $1 million or more in back tax, penalty, and interest due to an error, and the software company is saying, "I'm so sorry, you should have been watching. This is not our fault," and you're on the hook for all that penalty and interest. I guess that could breed some pretty bad feelings there and want to move totally away. So I know that one of the companies that we're working with is called Ceratax, and they are currently building out a lot of integrations with other platforms, but they're a company that concentrates solely on the software. So number one, their technology is up to date, where a lot of these other companies, their technology is 10 years old or more, which is ancient in the technology world. So Surtax definitely has all of the newest technology out there. And from the companies that are able to use them at this point, I'm hearing they love the solution. You hear anything along those lines?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, and as Surtax gets more integrations out there, I think they're going to be a much better solution for a lot more companies out there. So rather than taking this in-house, as we have a number of clients asking us to assist them, I think that there'll be other options out there, companies that concentrate on the software rather than trying to be all things to all people and just not being able to do it. So anything else that you're seeing out there?
Yeah, so actually, a lot of e-commerce companies are coming to us recently where they have accidentally started collecting tax without realizing it. So the amounts were piling up, tens of thousands. A few cases that we brought in, one over $200,000. What's happening is when they're setting up their Shopify account, somehow they are turning the tax collection on in all the states and not realizing it. And so then we onboard them and notice as we're onboarding them that they've collected all this tax. So seeing a lot of that lately. So just a warning to e-commerce sellers, just to make sure that they're not collecting the tax if they're not registered and ready to be able to remit these taxes.
Yeah, and that's a big thing. Tax collected, not remitted, often referred to as the cardinal sin of sales tax. Now, it's the one area where people actually can go to jail, but it's got to have some intent to it in order to get to jail. But it still comes with not only the civil penalties, but criminal penalties, which can be 50% or more, just because you made a mistake and had the tax accidentally turned on. It builds up over time. So that's a huge issue. And nowadays, with technology, it's so easy to inadvertently turn something on and not realize it, just as well as turn something off. I think that you and I were speaking, and we've seen a number of companies accidentally do that, or when they're adding new products, excluding it from the way their other products are being taxed. So technology, double-edged sword. It offers a lot of benefits, but you got to be careful using it because it does make things so easy to make mistakes. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
And what do these people feel? How are they feeling when when they see that they've got all this tax collected and it's not remitted?
well, ultimately shocked, and then, kind of in a panic because most of these companies are on the smaller side and they've spent the money. So now we have to come up with a way for them to either file VDAs, get into payment plans, and try and get these taxes remitted. And so for many companies, it's a huge burden.
Yeah, and that sort of ties into the previous issues you're talking about. These companies do have some sort of responsibility. I mean, you can't just take all the money that a company's sending you. You got to look at where it's coming from. Someone's got to be balancing the books there. But you're right, these are smaller companies, and money comes in, it's yours to spend. They're not, they didn't turn the tax on in their minds. So yeah, it's real easy to get yourself into one of these pickles. So be engaged, I think, is the moral of today's podcast. And if you want to be less engaged, make sure that you're actually working with someone who's more proactive rather than not even, should I say, reactive. I mean, some of these companies don't let you know anything. You figure it out on your own when the state's knocking on your door or sending you a demand letter or, auditing you or something along those lines. So that's where the commercial part comes in here. We believe we're a little bit more proactive than the software companies out there. I mean, you do get, a dedicated staff accountant who's going to be filing your returns. And I think that's one of the reasons that these software companies have so many problems. You don't have a dedicated person. I mean, you got someone doing all of the Florida returns, someone doing all the Texas returns. No one is looking at the company as a whole. And I think that just creates a lot of situations where things can fall through the cracks. So that's my 2 cents. Anything else you want to add in, Brenda?
No, but just to your point, we do see that. So there's no service, there's no support. They're not able to get any of their questions answered. So I'm seeing a lot of software companies, clients that are having to come to us because they can't get any kind of support or any kind of answers. And so I think that is something else as well that is lacking when you're using software for services. There's a chat ticket and it's 2 weeks before you hear anything. So yeah, absolutely. A firm like ours, you can reach out to your staff accountant anytime. We're very responsive, and yeah, it's a much more hands-on service.
You said something there a minute ago. There's not support, and we've been talking about companies for the most part. But I've heard that there are problems even with their CPA programs. Number one, going back to the marketing, I can't stand the marketing that you too can be a sales tax expert. Just sign up for our program. It takes years to learn this stuff. There's usually not any courses or anything else that are going to get you up to speed very quickly. And now you've given these accountants a false sense of confidence in going out and getting their clients into all sorts of problems. Are we seeing any of that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so we've talked about this in previous podcasts, but sometimes you got to ask, how long have you been doing multi-state tax returns? Because if someone's brand new to this, they may be a great accountant, but if they're relying on one of these software companies, we've seen too many times where the software companies just don't provide the support. And if you're relying on them and they're relying on the software company, that just sets you up for a lot of problems. So software companies are great at doing software. Where they start stubbing their toes is when it comes to the service part. So you just got to be aware of what the limitations are. And if you're going to use them for services, I think you need to be engaged. You can't just, like we said, set this and forget this.
And I think, Mike, Brenda, and I, we go to CPA societies, and Mike will speak and we'll interact with people. We have long-standing relationships at this point. And talking to those CPAs at those state societies, really, they can be good at a few states at a time. It's really hard for them to be an expert and to take a course at a software company and be an expert across the board. So just wanted to reemphasize, the accounting professionals are brilliant, CPAs are brilliant. They know a lot. It is really hard to know a lot past a few states when it comes to sales tax.
Yeah, absolutely. When we speak to foreign clients, they're amazed. It's like each state is its own little country. So I think that's a great analogy here. So, accountants have to know so much about, what their primary services that they offer are. To all of a sudden have to be a multi-state tax expert, it's a big, big burden. So if someone's had a SALT department, state and local tax department, for a number of years, that's a whole different story. We're talking about the smaller firms that are just now getting in to state and local taxes. And a lot of these companies know what they don't know. And they ask to partner with subject matter experts like ourselves. But a lot of them try to go it on their own. And we just have to be aware, as consumers out there, who we are working with. So I want to thank you, Brenda, for joining us today. This is a little bit of a different, format. Want to see if people enjoy this, if they like hearing the different viewpoints, and if we should do more of these on a going forward basis. So any last words, Ellie or Brenda?
No, thank you, Ellie. Thank you, Mike, for having me. I really enjoyed being with you today.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll close it out with our little spiel here, Mike. So again, if you like this podcast, please like and subscribe. It's a really important way to support us here. And if you have sales tax needs, we offer many solutions and services. We'd love to work with you. We'd love to hear from you. You can reach out to me directly at eMoffat@Sales Tax and More. That's EMOFFAT@salestaxandmore.com. And you can reach out to us on our website as well, salestaxandmore.com. And thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you, everyone, and hope to see you on the next episode of the Sales Tax and More podcast. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to hit subscribe and check out all the resources we have out on the web.